Welcome to Indian Laboratories Forum. We are going to learn about ISO, IEC 17025, 2017. General requirements for the competence of testing and calibration laboratories. Clause 7.1. I hope you have completed learning up to Clause 6.6. If you have not completed it, please refer to our previous videos. Clause 7.1, Review of Requests, Tenders, and Contracts. The laboratory shall have a procedure for the review of requests, tenders, and contracts. This particular clause is demanding the procedure for review of requests, tenders, and contracts. The procedure shall ensure that the requirements are adequately defined, documented, and understood. Laboratory should have test request form, or calibration request form. Customer can request the services through test request, or calibration request form. Those requests should be reviewed and understood by the laboratory, before accepting the sample for testing, or calibration. The laboratory has the capability and resources to meet the requirements. Laboratory has to define the scope testing, check the resources, before accepting for testing, or calibration, such as available competent manpower, availability of chemicals, consumables, reagents, availability of valid methods, availability of suitable environmental conditions as per the method. These all should be reviewed to meet the requirements of customer, and to produce quality of results. Where external providers are used, the requirements of 6.6 are applied, and the laboratory advises the customer of the specific laboratory activities to be performed by the external provider, and gains the customer's approval. Whenever a laboratory uses a subcontracting lab, laboratory should comply with the requirements of ISO, IEC 17025, 2017, Clause 6.6, before going to subcontract the sample to any other laboratory. The laboratory should get approval from its customer. The appropriate methods or procedures are selected and are capable of meeting the customer's requirements. The lab has to use suitable, verified, or validated methods for meeting customer requirements and producing quality results. The laboratory shall inform the customer when the method requested by the customer is considered inappropriate or out of date, such as not suitable method for the requested test, or not latest method. Those details should be informed, and use the appropriate, latest method upon customer concurrence. When the customer requests a statement of conformity to a specification or standard for the test or calibration, example, pass or fail, intolerance, or out of tolerance, the specification or standard and the decision rule shall be clearly defined. Unless inherent in the requested specification or standard, the decision rule selected shall be communicated to, and agreed with, the customer. Based on customer requests, a statement of conformity has to be given in the test report based on the obtained results, such as pass, fail, out of specification, etc. When the laboratory reports results based on a decision rule, that rule should be communicated to the customer, and it should be agreed upon by the customer, before reporting same. Any differences between the request or tender and the contract shall be resolved before laboratory activities commence. Laboratory and customer should agree on the request, or long-term contract, and tenders, before going to accept the samples for testing. Requests, or contracts, or tenders, which may include price, timeline, test method, sample quantity required, sample receipt conditions, sample retention period, etc. Each contract shall be acceptable both to the laboratory and the customer. Deviations requested by the customer shall not impact the integrity of the laboratory or the validity of the results. If any deviation requested by the customer, laboratory has to ensure that those deviations will not impact the integrity of the laboratory and not having impact on quality of results, such as generations of wrong results. The customer shall be informed of any deviation from the contract. Any deviation from the contract, such as a change in test method, a change in price, a change in sample quantity, or a change in TAT, should be communicated to the customer. If a contract is amended after work has commenced, the contract review shall be repeated, and any amendments shall be communicated to all affected personnel. During the testing, if new requirements come from the customer, such as a change in method, the addition of a new test parameter, or the deletion of a test parameter, the laboratory has to amend the respective records and communicate those changes to laboratory personnel accordingly. The laboratory shall cooperate with customers, or their representatives, in clarifying the customer's request, and in monitoring the laboratory's performance in relation to the work performed. The laboratory should clarify the doubts about the work that is performed for a specific customer. If any customer wants to witness the testing or calibration, the laboratory should provide reasonable access in monitoring the laboratory activity in relation to the work performed for that customer. Records of reviews, including any significant changes, shall be retained. Records shall also be retained of pertinent discussions with a customer relating to the customer's requirements or the results of the laboratory activities. Takeaway from Clause 7.1. The laboratory should have a procedure for reviewing requests, tenders, and contracts. Procedures should define review requirements with adequate resources, such as man, machine, method, and materials, to meet the needs of customers, which is also called feasibility confirmations of request. When laboratory is not having capability for specific test, laboratory can subcontract the test, but laboratory should take prior approval of customer for subcontracting. If method selected by customer is not appropriate, lab should inform the customer on selection of valid or updated method. Reporting a statement of conformity, a decision rule upon customer request, or based on specification or standard requirements. That decision rule should be communicated to and agreed with customer, unless standard specification defines a mandatory. If the customer requests any deviation, the laboratory should ensure that there will be no impact on the integrity of the lab activities or the quality of the results. If any change or deviation is required from the contract or test request, the customer should be informed. If amendment to test request, contract required, same feasibility review should be done, and inform the concerned employees on amended request. The laboratory needs to clarify the customer's concerns, and if the customer requests to witness the activity, the lab should allow, with reason, access to the testing area by ensuring the confidentiality of other customers is maintained. Review of requests, tenders, contracts, and customer communication records has to be retained. Examples of non-conformances as per Clause 7.1. The laboratory does not have a procedure for review of requests, tenders, and contracts. Laboratory is not informing the customer when the method requested by the customer is considered inappropriate or out of date. The laboratory was not communicated and not agreed with the customer before reporting the decision rule. As per the customer confirmation, the laboratory has performed the test on the XYZ product, which is received in leakage conditions. Lab has not assessed the impact on the integrity of the laboratory or the validity of the results. The customer has requested to use the ABC method for testing, but the laboratory used the XYZ method without communicating with the customer. Laboratory is not retaining the records as per the requirement of Clause 7.1.8. Hope you enjoyed learning about the requirement of Clause 7.1 of ISO, IEC 17025, 2017 and examples of non-conformances as per Clause 7.1. Please like, subscribe and click on bell icon for regular updates. Thank you. Happy learning!